Hi, this is Kylie Coo. Welcome to my studio and welcome to week 9 of creating a positivity deck. And the word I'm going to focus on this week is balance. So last week I had looked at rest, and to be honest, in the last few days I haven't had much rest at all. It's been an interesting week, and I found it interesting that the word that I had already chosen for this week was balance. So as I sat down to do my bit of journaling and to think about the word balance, I started to think about what actually is it that I need to balance. And it struck me that one of the things that's often talked about, and certainly it's something I talked about a lot with family, with friends, with colleagues, is that kind of whole notion of work-life balance. And for me, it's a kind of phrase that's bandied about a lot. And it's almost as if it's kind of, for want of a better phrase, the Holy Grail. So what is it that we're trying to balance? Work and life? We have this kind of general notion, or at least I have this kind of general notion of what that's about, but I don't actually know what it means. And I started to think about it further and just started to do this little diagram. So there's me at the centre thinking about work and then thinking about life. And what is life? Well, work is obviously part of life for many people. So it's not just something we can put to the side and forget about. But is it simply about balancing work with this big kind of general thing, generic phrase of life? So I started to think about that and realised that part of the balance is about family, about those we love, about friends, the time we spend with them, about home, the time that's spent on just keeping our home, doing all the tasks that's required, the garden. I love my garden, but it is also a chore. There are chores that need to be done in it. So thinking about that and just the way that I balance all those things, and it can be overwhelming in a sense to think about all of those, and obviously I don't want it to be overwhelming. I want to think about it in that kind of positive way. So work-life balance, big question mark, but starting to break it down into all those other things. And then I was thinking back about the previous weeks and thinking about, relaxation, all the things that I talked about that I wanted to do to help relax, all the things about self-care. So how do I fit all of this into the time that I have available? And I think it's something that many of us kind of struggle with. But as I say, I didn't want to be overwhelmed by this. I wanted to think about, so I know what it is I need to balance. And it's just, I guess, being kind of mindful of all those different things, all those calls, in a sense, on my time. Sometimes I think I'd like to sit and do art and craft every minute of every day, but that's just not possible. So I now turn to my card, and again thinking about how I transfer some positive thoughts to my card. So I had this piece of scrap paper. It's a piece of handmade paper, bought handmade paper, not something I made. And I want to just cover the entire face of my card with that piece of paper. So I'm just going to put some fluid matte medium onto the paper, and then I'll stick my card down to it. It was quite tight in terms of the size, so I decided to do it this way rather than the other way round, so I could actually see that the card was fitting on all the edges. And you'll see there it's quite a neat fit, but I got it done. And all I'm going to do now is just use a dry piece of cloth just to push it down from this side so that the two pieces are fully adhered and that there's no bubbles in between and no glue coming out over the edges. And then once that's done, I'll just cut around it. It wasn't fully dry at this stage, but because it was a nice thick piece of paper, it cut fairly well. So I now have it. It's a nice piece of paper, a pattern, sort of embossed pattern with a kind of glitter through it. So I then started to think about what now, and I'd pulled out these little pieces. I think I've brought these out a couple of times before, just looking at any of these, if any of these would go. And then I pulled out this one that I'd cut a circle from before. And although it had a kind of break in it, I thought if I glued that down, that might look quite nice. Then started to look around, and I had lying about some dried hydrangea flowers. I was using these in another project a week or so ago, not one that I'd filmed. So this one of the petals had come off it, and I'm just pulling that in from the side. And I looked at that, and initially I'd thought about kind of gluing it in place, but then I started to think in terms of balance. Sometimes it is about looking at what's out of balance and pulling it back in. So suddenly this circle represented something different, you know, whether it was me or whatever, I don't really know, but I'm looking at that and thinking it's about bringing everything into that circle, recognising that sometimes things go out of it, things can go a bit out of kilter, but looking at how things can be brought into balance in a very positive way. So I'm now going to glue my circle down, just using some tacky glue. I felt that it probably needed a strong glue just to stick this to the other piece of paper that was there. And because that piece of paper is slightly raised, slightly embossed, I thought that maybe a glue stick wouldn't be strong enough on this occasion. So I don't want a lot of excess glue coming out over it, so I'm just smoothing it out with my finger. And now just putting it in place on my card. And just going round that gently and just pushing it into place. And again, I'll just take this piece of dry cloth and just dab it down. So I'm now bringing my hydrangea petals back in. These came out of my own garden, and I had just pressed them a little bit a few weeks ago. And now I'm just going to take some of the fluid matte medium again, and I'm going to glue these into place. And I decide that what I'll do is I'll actually fill the inside of the circle with the glue rather than putting the glue onto the actual petals themselves. and just trying to make sure that, again, they are fully adhered. Although they were quite flat, there was little bits that kind of kept popping up. So again, just taking that dry cloth again and just pushing gently. And also trying to lift any excess glue at this stage. Now, because these are petals, I decided that I wanted to try and almost preserve them in some way on the card. So I decided I would take some glossy accents and just go over all of this, including the circle, or at least the outer edge of the circle. And I'm just going to spread that with a small paintbrush. So I'm trying not to get any bubbles in this. But equally I'm trying to make sure that I get it all covered. It was quite hard to see just with the light on it, difficult to see if I'd missed any pieces or not. And obviously the little stalk was a little bit difficult to make sure it was properly in place. But just trying to ensure that there was sufficient glue underneath it, sufficient of the glossy accents underneath it to hold it in place, and hopefully it will give it a little coating across the top. So that's going to take a little while to dry, but meantime I decide to work on my word. And I have this old piece of squared paper. Actually came from an old school book of mine, so I guess one could call it vintage now. And it's nice and faded and has that kind of vintage look about it, but I only need a small piece. I wanted to keep this simple. And I'm just using a normal kind of biro type pen just to right balance. Realised there was some paint, dried paint on the end of it. I do sometimes use it in other things that I've painted on, in journal pages and the likes. And I'll tear a little edge off that. And then all I'm going to do is glue it into place, and again I just use some of the tacky glue. So the card will probably take I don't know, maybe a good day to dry fully. I'm trying to be careful not to touch where I've actually put the glossy accents because I don't want to get any fingerprints in that. So I have taken some photographs of it as is, so it's not entirely clear. It still has that slightly milky colour to it, but it will clear in the next 24 hours. Again, just smoothing that out before I put it onto the card because I don't want the glue to go everywhere on the card. So in some ways this seems a very simple card, but I did feel that it reflected a positive statement for me about the word balance and my thoughts around balance and bringing things back into balance. And all I'll do to finish off the card is to take some black StazOn, and I just go very gently and lightly around the edge of the card. So if you're following along with me, I hope you will think about what balance means for you and the things in your life that you have to bring into balance. So as always, I thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video, and I hope you will join me again next week. I'll just finish off by looking at my card alongside the journaling, and then that will be me. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.